Hi, I'm Rahul Mishra, and I'm right now at my home in Noida.
I'm Maximiliano Modesti. I'm based out of Paris and Bombay since the last 28 years now.
I'm Toolika Gupta, currently heading the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design. So the focus of the institute is also to work in the area of design and handcrafting. For example, we do have institutes, which are there like NIFT and NID, and the focus is on industrial design. But here the focus is how can we make our traditional crafts more meaningful in today's context. The focus is how can we make these youngsters who are either children of craftspeople or children who have an interest in design, young adults who come to the institute to become designers in the field of Indian handicrafts.
I work with the idea of 4 Ps. So before we start designing anything, it's all about purpose. What is the purpose of creating yet another commodity when already so many things exist in the world? Then purpose often drives the process, how we achieve that task, how we do those things. And then process is something which leads to participation. That participation happens from craftsmen, from handloom weavers or hand embroiderers, and then finally the product is born. So where most of the cases when anybody designing a product, first comes product, but for us first purpose, and product is often the byproduct of the process participation and the larger picture which we want to achieve.
The unique reason for me to be based out of most of the time of my life out of India is because of the uniqueness of Indian craft. When I landed in the country 28 years ago, I was mesmerized and amazed by the uniqueness of these crafts that I had never seen anywhere around the world except in India. What I've been doing since the last 28 years, which is bridging the craft and the production for luxury brands around the world, is really based on this unique DNA of India, which is that we are in 2021. What you can find in India is no longer possible to be done anywhere else in the world. If a young designer wants to customize a handloom, a design, if a young designer wants to create its own brand and have custom-made embroideries, that's the only place where today you can do it commercially, and I would say even on a very modern design approach. Indian embroidery is today used by all the brands around the world. Okay, there is not a single brand around the world that do not come to India to make its own embroidery. There is very clearly 2 groups of brands. There are the brands that are extremely proud of coming to India, and they voice it, they say it, and they put even a Made in India label. And you would be surprised to know who are these brands. In the first group, you have very, very few brands acknowledging and being extremely vocal and proud of what they are doing in India. On the other side, I would say you have 90% of the luxury brands that still keep they keep it hidden. They don't want to communicate about it, which for me is still a big mystery. Let's never forget that at the early 20s, the biggest clients of haute couture in Paris were the Indian royal families.
It's rather than looking at other people giving us due credit about, made in India or make in India label, we have to do a soul searching in this mindless pursuit of becoming a fast fashion garment machinery. So I think Made in India has been respected historically and is going to remain respected. I don't think like a designer like me will able to contribute anything to such a big thing which already exists.
300 years ago, or even at that time, India was exporting, and chintz especially. So in those days, what we see in history is not much of embroidery being exported, but a lot of beautifully printed, painted and excellently woven textiles being exported because there was no brands as such. So Made in India was a brand in itself. In fact, when we read about the cashmere shawls that were popularized by Napoleon's wife, everybody wanted a cashmere shawl in the late 1790s and early 1800s. They started manufacturing it in Europe. And then people who would buy it would say, no, this is not real Made in India. We do have references of these things. So copies of Indian luxury products were made in France and in England. So now we are also, if we look at the kind of luxury items that have been exported, I mean, of course, Kashmir shawl comes to the forefront, but shins, palampors, multiple products that have gone to the West, a Saudagiri fabric, which a lot of people do not know much about because it's not really worked upon much, but different kind of fabrics. Now, my reason to say this is that some purists in the craft sector feel that these were our traditional styles and they should not go away. I feel a little differently. I feel they were traditional. They're just being labeled traditional because they were made 200 years ago. But at that point in time, they were very contemporary. That is what the world wanted. And thus, they were created. We are good with the technique, but our motives can change. Our things can change based on the requirement of the client, which is what currently our designers are doing.
The slowness of process of making garment enables that much bigger window of employment for the people who want to work on that. So for me, I have to make clothes. And if I slow down the process of making textiles, it allows more people to come and participate in process of making those clothes. So this was the whole purpose behind everything. That's how the journey with embroidery started. First 1 year, when I kept doing embroideries, I kept going to these places in Dharavi and Jijamata and very difficult places where you see these guys working from. And they were doing embroidery with some of the biggest labels. I'm talking $1 billion brands of the world. So by the time the opportunity came out, Woolmark Prize, I asked them, would they like to go back to village? So 20 people agreed in the beginning. And I promised them whatever they get paid in Mumbai, they will get paid. And they get home cooked food. They are able to stay with their children, they are able to take care of the old parents, and they are able to live in the houses as they are built for themselves. So most of the embroiderers, you'll be surprised, they have got fairly big houses, but they are forced to sometimes in 20 by 10 size of room, you can have 20 people sleeping next to each other.
It reminded me my initial years in fashion with Azzedine Alaïa. I had the chance of working 5 years, and when I say 5 years, I always said that it was almost like 10 years because we worked 24 hours 7 on the collection. But at the same time, Mr. Alaïa was way before anybody. He had already said in 93, 94 that the fashion system could not work anymore the way it was working, that the rhythm of the collection was not right, and that if you really wanted to make a beautiful dress, a beautiful embroidery, and a beautiful garment, it takes time. I come to the country that was famous for the $1 t-shirt, as Rahul said it. And instead of $1 t-shirt, I see all this incredible craft and I see embroidery. I'm myself not an embroidery designer, I'm a fashion designer. So I was trained in the fashion field. Suddenly I see embroidery everywhere in India. I could see it in Delhi, I could see it in Bombay, I could see it in Lucknow, I could see it in Varanasi. So I went back to Paris that summer of 93, and I told Azzedine, the way they do embroidery in India is completely different from the way they do it in Paris. And you know, I think we should embroider the knitted dresses, because of course Azzedine was famous for the knitted dresses. And that's how we did 1 year later. We did one collection. Imagine the power of a designer who suddenly tells to everybody, no, there's no more collection, there's no more thing. And this was so much in respect for the craftsmanship. You know that it's all about craft, the way he crafted his patterns, the way he crafted his garments, and the way the craft of others would come into making all this. If I'm sharing this memory with you, is really to say that when the lockdown happened last year, honestly, I said, oh my God, you know, I think the world is going to collapse. and it's over. Okay, we're going to close the institute in Lucknow. We're going to close everything because who wants to buy beautifully crafted pieces, okay, in such a mess? And the reality is that it's been crazy since 1 year. It's literally been crazy. So people are on one side not consuming anymore I feel the cheap stuff, but they're coming for things that are very special.
Yes.
They have a kind of a spirit that they know that it's crafted with love, with time, and it's unique.
So we invite artisans from across the country. And before the lockdown, they were all coming here physically. We would invite them, whether it is leather puppetry from south of India, or it is bamboo from the east of India, bamboo artisans, stone artisans from across Rajasthan, also from Agra. For the first time in 2020, we had online workshops. And not only for our students, but what we did during summer of 2020, which is June, July, we thought if we could engage artisans, to address people across the world, it could help them financially, and also people will get to know them and can place orders directly. So we sort of curated 10 workshops where we did Madhubani painting online, we did embroidery, small mirror work, beadwork online, calligraphy, different kinds of crafts and arts that India has. We were surprised to see that people from across the world registered. In fact, people from America said, we will not be able to attend because the timing does not suit us, but can you share the video recordings? And we are ready to pay for that.
The question of sustainability, it's something that I've been addressing thanks to Mr. Elias in the last 25 years. Okay, what was the sense of all this? How could we concentrate our energy? It was starting from the studio, actually. How from the studio can you already concentrate your energy and be focused on what is the right garment? I remember, so I flew to New York to meet Donna Karen, and I entered the studio. And suddenly, I get the shock of my life, okay? Because there are I remember there was at least 400 garments, okay, lined up in the studio. Magic, 400 garments. And basically, she was selecting the garments that would go on the runway. Instead of making 5, 6, 10, 20 designs, I make one design. And that's what makes me different, most probably, of many other people. Because when I work with a designer, I always go to see them with 1 or 2 swatches, okay? And they always tell me, but you don't have more swatches? I said, no, but these 1 or 2 swatches are the right swatches for you. So take them or leave it. That's the way I'm working.
The biggest reason in last 100 years of humanity, we are facing the biggest question of survival is because nothing is sustainable today, because it's too fast-paced. We are losing out on the natural rhythm of nature. Anything, if it can be made or produced at a speed of human pace, which is like a natural pace, the world has enough to support double the population what world has today. But if we keep producing things in a mechanized way, where machines are too fast to consume resources, we will never be able to achieve sustainable targets. Even the most sustainable material like organic cotton, which might grow in a most natural condition, will not be enough if it is used for 1 billion t-shirts produced by some fast fashion brand.
I feel that what you've been talking about, sustainability, is so true. But one thing is very important, that the consumers also have to realize that. So it has to be a very conscious consumption pattern that needs to be developed, rather than mindless buying. Because if people don't buy, then people will not produce. That is also there.
They advertise, they push you down your throat. They make you realize, like, I'm just sharing with this, I'm using a 6-7 year old phone, which is iPhone 6,
Same here.
6S, and it's working so well. Why do I have to buy a new phone?
So we are doing a research paper on collaborative consumption. Say if people start consuming things collaboratively, there's a good product and everybody need not buy it, but together. So one person say buys it. What if because across the world they are doing things, especially with wedding garments and things like that, where people are not buying and there's a kind of collaborative consumption happening. So that is also like a solution. But let's see, we're trying to do a paper on that, research on that, to figure out whether collaborative consumption is a good way for sustainability forward. With a few additions from our side, additions like craft institutes across the country, because that is something I really feel is very important if we have to make a mark in the field of craft education. A craft ministry, if India does not have a ministry for crafts. There is textile ministry, there are boards for handloom. In fact, they were recently disbanded also. Then there is a small department, but there is no ministry. And it's such an important area, because a lot of people are employed in the craft sector in our country. So I feel if handled carefully, and if they are given their due credit, they are not forced to learn, ways which they do not know, but things that they know and how. So education has to be a little different here, trying to understand what they know and to take it from there. So I think I feel if everybody works towards it, Indian crafts have a very, very bright future.
When such a rich country like India will finally realize that you need to sustain, you need to have a political will that will create a real world impact assessment on the Indian entity. Okay, there is an Indian identity that today, unfortunately, cannot expand because there is no political will. If we compare it with what's happening in China today, it's already 30 years that China understood that the culture of China is as important as its industry and its finances. So I really hope there's going to be some shakeup, but people are going to realize. I hope most probably this crisis will redistribute some cards, and let's see what's going to happen.
I completely like what I have been also demanding in one of my last conversation with Honorable Textile Minister. Also, I was asking her, like, if we can find a way of creating a Handmade in India as a label, which kind of audits everything which is done through hand processes. Because what is the biggest problem which is happening now is most of the handloom textiles are being replicated exactly in the same way on machine. Similarly, a lot of hand embroidery is done on machine and can easily pass off easily for consumers as well as for the media as a hand embroidery. I think recent quote, Tarun Tehlani also said the same thing. What really worries him that a lot of designer lehengas are actually 95%. These are, I'm talking like mainstream designers, 90 to 95% machine embroiderer. And on top of it, just 5 to 10% adde ka kaam, which is hand embroidery, which is done. So actually, this is what is happening when you start looking at business side of everything. So I think in that way, machines are, for last 10 to 20 years, I think this machines have become very sophisticated that they're able to achieve what hands are making. I think that is something technology-wise, there's no harm. If you want to use a machine somewhere, there's no harm. But the purity of product and the right kind of information of the product, how much of hand hours have gone into it, how much a portion is, has to be properly audited and properly put forward. And that's where I really feel a change has to be brought about from all of us in society as well as in manufacturing. I think with the kind of experience that Max has and obviously hearing about gods of fashion from him, how it was. And then Dr. Toolika talking about history, heritage behind such beautiful, fabulous textile, what we have. I think this is the biggest asset. Everything bigger than, any monument which India has is the skill and know-how of craft what we have. And it was so enriching knowing about it, discussing this with two of you today.
Thank you, Toolika. Thank you, Rahul, for joining me on this discussion. I always say that I wish that there was more of these interactions with the professionals of the industry in India, with students, because I think it's very, very important. Again, I will go back to the god of fashion, as Rahul said, but one of the most beautiful memories with Azzeddine Alaya was the chance of sharing experiences and knowledge and small stories with a lot of fashion insiders in Paris when I was working there. So thank you to Tata CLiQ, thank you to all of you, and I really hope that these discussions will happen more and more. Thank you.